Hello everyone, welcome back. Cultured Khun here. So, I had gone on a week's leave as usual. I told you I'll be releasing these as and when. And thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for watching, subscribing, sharing, commenting, liking, and so on and so forth. Today we're continuing on with the Crash Course Christianity. Last video I'd spoken about creation, and that was creation part 1. I connoted the ideas of the cosmos, and we spoke about space, and we spoke about spirituality, and spoke about the spiritual element to the stars. Today, we'll continue on with creation, but want to speak more keenly on the idea of mankind, and mankind's introduction into the story of Christianity. So Christianity is a story about people, it's a story about mankind, it's a story ultimately of sin, salvation, covenants being broken, reformed, and people being led to the light. And we start obviously in Genesis. We start with Adam and Eve, who then had Cain, Abel, Seth. And we see through the generations of families, whether it's with Noah, whether it's with Moses, Melchizedek, David, Solomon, James, Jude, Jesus himself, and all these other famous canonical characters, is that there is a struggle. There's a struggle with the idea of sin. And what is sin? Sin is living in the absence of God. As mentioned before about evil. Evil being the privation of good, so evil being the absence of God. So where God isn't, there is bad. It's not that the badness in itself is a substance, it's substantive. It's that the lack of God is substantive. So that lack, which we then term evil or evil, whatever you call it. And so I just wanted to dive a bit deeper into Christian canon about how we carry ourselves out, because I think it's important to note that the early Christians didn't have a Bible. So the early Christians didn't have a string of stories, texts, and extradition from evidence that led them to their beliefs. The old Christians learned via observance. They learned by watching the people close to them. They learned by speaking conversationally. They passed on information orally the way I am right now. It's not everyone who had metatextual references to when was this written? Okay, 7 BCE, 7th century before Christ. Okay, 7 AD, 7 centuries after birth of Christ. Okay, there's the Julian calendar inference. There's the Assyrian Empire influenced the Babylonian Empire, the Egyptian, there's Egyptology, cosmology, and all these facets leading into the creation of the great string of stories, which we now call the Bible, which is a compilation of canon. It is a library of literature, poems, of songs, of praises, of heartache, of divorce, of desperation, of murder, of rape, of devastation on an enormous scale. You know, they didn't have that. A lot of them would pass on knowledge via stories, townfolk, and word of mouth. I'm sure you're familiar with the game Chinese Whispers. Someone tells a story here, someone adds a bit of inference, the experimentation, it changed the evidence a little bit, and it moved. And that's how we came to redaction criticism. So we came to criticize the Bible, criticize it for being corrupted, contaminated, and being evident of meddling from the human hand. But besides that, we need to talk more critically about the impact of not having those. So I believe the Christians of the olden days were more action-oriented. I believe they weren't as confused because they didn't have too many inferences of information. There weren't as many palettes for postulating different philosophies. And so the templates were more simplistic. You do this or you die. And so sin, for all of them, was closer to death, because the reward for sin would be death in many cases. If you cheated on your wife in certain cultures, you would find yourself dead. If you cheated on your husband, you'd find yourself dead. If you were found engaging in intercourse which ran counter to the ideas of the community, i.e. you engaged homosexually, you'd find yourself dead. And so there were many consequences for their actions. And so the side cities were more consequential, they were more teleological in how they did things. Whereas I think for us, we're more deontological, we're more duty-bound, we're more arbitrary with our morality. You know, we're more thinking. And I don't want to say that the people of old didn't think, but I think we spend way more capital into our thoughts. And by capital, I mean we spend more money, more effort, more attention, more time just living in our heads, not living in the real world, interacting with people. So when you interact with the text, particularly with Genesis 1, 26 to 27, we have this idea of Imago Dei. So it's the idea that God has made the world to resemble him. So we are a reflection of God. We are made in his image and likeness. And image and likeness means we carry certain traits, the characteristics of God. So we resemble that of a higher being. And so we should seek to live in that strata of existence. But now we're obviously prone to sin, as we have the story of Adam and Eve, original sin, the temptation. And that temptation oftentimes is knowledge. Knowledge oftentimes triggers curiosity, because once you know something, you know you don't know a lot of things. And so there is that inquisitive thought activated via your interaction with new pieces of information. And that led to the course of the story of the Bible. We have the story of the Jews and the Gentiles all throughout the Old Testament until in the New Testament, when Jesus arrives to reestablish the covenant with God. The covenant which was formally established with Abraham, which before that was established with Moses, which before that was established with Adam and Eve, who then made Cain, Abel, Seth, who then also reestablished the covenant, who then broke it, and then their descendants suffered the consequences for that action. So I want to talk about creation, and I believe that as Christians, we were created to be salt of the earth. And I'm paraphrasing that from the Bible, because as it says in James 5 verse 16, where we're called to confess our sins and to pray for one another to heal, we are called to be true to one another. We are called to live in totality of the value of our being. Now, if you do not accept that you are an extension of God, or you are birthed from God, or you are weaved in your womb by the hands of the divine creator, then you'll be unable to grasp the concept of the Bible as a whole. You'll be unable to wrestle correctly with the words, the verbiage, and the themes which are consistent throughout the canon. And I speak this message today because I genuinely believe that there's some of you sat there at home wondering, why do I exist? Does anything even matter? There's some of you who are becoming a bit nihilistic in your views. There's some of you who believe a lot of these things that we pursue are meaningless, whether it's money, whether it's men, whether it's women, whether it's a good physique, whether it's a good job, whether it's a good standing in society, whatever the case may be. There are those of us struggling to see the value in ourselves and struggling to place ourselves amongst the value chain of society, whether it be in corporate, whether it be in schooling, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in childcare, whether it be in entertainment, whether it be in information, whether it be in edification of others, whether it be in life coaching, in healing. And I think that there is something there to be addressed. There is something to be acknowledged of that absence, that void within of value, where you just don't feel like you fit in and you don't feel like you're meant to be here. And I'm here to say you are. And I'm here to say that Christianity teaches us that more than that, you have a duty to yourself, to God, and to the world to let your light shine as brightly as you can, because you are meant to be a shining example of the canon and the creed which you follow, provided you consubstantiate your actions and the consequences of your actions with that forecasted in the creed, readily available to you if you read a Bible or you have a journal or you can get an app on your phone. And so I wanted to preach this message to say that as Christians, we are called to pray and to heal. So we are called to engage in that mental transaction between the subconscious and the conscious. And we are meant to bring up the lower self to the higher self, and are meant to raise the consciousness of everyone around us. We're meant to be a blessing to the world, not a curse. And we're meant to heal broken hearts and put back the wings of angels who have fallen from grace. Angels, messenger, angelos. We're meant to pass on messages. We're meant to evangelize the world, share the gospel, share the good news. God loves you. You are loved by God. You are from God. You carry God. God speaks through you as a vessel, as a channel of communication to the outside world. And that message is consistent with the Bible. It's consistent with all the great prophets, or consistent with all the great preachers, all the great pastors who were in the text itself. And those people who stay true to the text, those people who are loyal. Not all members of the liturgy are loyal. Let me just note that. Some popes have done some mischievous things. Some preachers, some pastors, some men of God, some deacons, some baronesses, some dukes, some people in high positions of power have influenced people for the wrong aim. But that is not to say that Christianity is still a bad vehicle for development of the mind, body, and soul. That's not to say that. But it is to say that people are human, people are subject to their flaws, people are fallible. And even all throughout the Bible, you see with Noah who's fallible, with Moses who's fallible, with David who's fallible, with Solomon who's fallible, with Paul who's fallible, with John, with James, with Jude, with Melchizedek, with Zechariah, with Enoch, with everyone mentioned in the Bible has their flaws. And they all struggle with salvation. They all struggle with sin because the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. And that speaks to the essence of what it means to be fully human, is that you are aware of your flaws and you acknowledge that these fault lines can cause havoc for you. They can cause an earthquake in your world, but you still strive to that strata, that higher plane of existence, because that is where you belong. That is where you come from. That's where your soul originates from. And even your napash, your spirit, your yao, your life essence comes from beyond you. It comes from outside of this realm. Okay. Now, I hope you guys can take home this message and take it to heart, of that you can digest some of the nuggets I was throwing at you, because I do realize that with these videos, I do put out a lot of information. And it's a lot of information which you have to sift through, maybe watch 1 or 2 times. But it's important to digest it. It's important to nibble at it, think on it a bit, let it marinate in your mind, let it sizzle in your spirit a little bit. And soon, those seeds will bear fruit in your life. So with that being said, this is Kultured Khun. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something new. If you didn't, please comment down below on how can I improve on this series so far. And yeah, have a good day. Good night. God bless. If you're watching this, because it'll be evening when I release this. Thanks a lot. Kultured Khun out.